I've been playing mouse and keyboard for about a year now, and over this year, I've really struggled to find a sensitivity combination that didn't just feel good, but also match my playstyle in Apex and other games. It wasn't easy at first, but very quickly, I realized that sensitivity isn't actually everything. So in this video, I'm going to expose everything that helped me reach the aim that I currently developed in just a year of playing mouse and keyboard. In spoilers, it's not what you think.
Yo, what is going on? Legends Coach District here, and today I'm going to be walking... What's this thing doing here? Get out of here. Go! Today I'm going to be walking you guys through my Apex Legends settings, helping you guys better understand, you know, kind of what I'm playing on right now on mouse and keyboard. And I'm going to be walking you through some things that you may want to change and overall kind of help you understand settings as a whole for mouse and keyboard. I switched to mouse and keyboard about a year ago. In the summer of last year, so really close to a year now, I've been playing on mouse and keyboard, and it has been very tough. And throughout that entire year of practicing every single day, basically starting again from the ground up and relearning not just how to kind of, you know, aim and move, but basically relearning how to play Apex, I've come across a whole bunch of different things that has helped me make the journey a lot easier in regards to my settings and some of the stuff that I use. Now, today is not going to be just a, hey, this is what I play kind of thing, but it's also going to be what gear do I play with and why do I use some of the settings that I do to just, again, overall kind of make things a lot easier for me to have been progressing as quickly and as easily as possible. So let's kind of start off here with my mouse settings and my DPI. Now, I think a lot of people, when it comes to sensitivity and DPI, they don't really understand what they're changing. They just know that it makes it faster and slower. So we'll kind of break this down in a super easy way. I play 0.9, or rather 0.69 in-game sensitivity, mostly for the laughs because I think it's funny, and mostly for the culture. But overall, 0.69 sensitivity for me is comfortable, especially with my mouse DPI, which is 1600. Now, for those people who maybe don't really know what sense and DPI means, your DPI means dots per inch. So for every inch that I move my mouse, how many times is it going to input? Now, that input is your in-game sensitivity. So I play 1600 DPI. For every inch I move my mouse, it's going to input 1600 0.69 sensitivities worth of in-game mouse movement. The main reason why I choose to play 1600 DPI instead of maybe like 1200 or 1400, or the average I'm pretty sure is like 800 DPI for most players. The reason why I play 1600 DPI is because the higher your DPI is, the more it inputs and the more it's registering all of these little tiny micro movements. Now, for most people, 1600 DPI is going to be a very jittery feeling. It's going to feel like it's registering all those little movements that you like don't want to be registered. But to me, I actually like that because it helps me focus a lot more on my form, and it also gives me more benefits in terms of flicking, in terms of tracking, and as well in terms of recoil control. Now, in my opinion, recoil and just overall aiming gets better with a higher DPI because you get all those little micro inputs. Now, in terms of recoil control happens the moment that you start moving your mouse. So the instant I start moving and inputting, right, it's going to start controlling that recoil. And having a higher DPI allows you to get more of those little micro inputs to help you control exactly what it is that you're trying to do, compared to something like 800 DPI. I'm just getting a lot more inputs, so it's going to do a lot more of what I'm trying to make it do. Now, not only in terms of like raw recoil control, where maybe I'm trying to follow a very specific pattern to a T. Now, here's where kind of things start to get a little bit weird. We're going to dive into my keybinds and my gameplay settings here in a second, but before we move away from sensitivity, I want to cover something that is even more important than what my sensitivity is and what my DPI is. A lot of people, they tend to ask what pro players play on in-game. And even though this isn't a horrible question, it's really not a great question to be asking, because 0.69 sensitivity with 1600 DPI to me feels a certain way, but to you it's going to feel completely different. And there's a whole bunch of different reasons why. Mostly, the main reason is what mouse, skates, and mousepad you're currently using. Now, like I was saying, your gear is what is going to be basically determining how your sensitivity truly feels. Now, for instance, I currently play on the Razer Viper V3 Pro with the white edition. Even going from like one mouse to the next, it may not make a massive difference in terms of how you play and how you perform. A lot of your technique and, you know, just your overall gameplay is going to make a major difference. But to some degree, the devices or the gear that you play with is going to, I hate to say it, but it will actually like really affect how you play. I think I was kind of, you know, lowballing just how important this stuff is. For instance, a really heavy mice or a really heavy mouse playing on my sensitivity may feel a little bit too uncontrollable because the amount of force that you're going to have to push before your mouse gets moving might be a lot more than my super lightweight mouse. And the amount of force that your mouse is going to carry as you try to slow it down is a lot more than my mouse, meaning on a higher sensitivity like mine, it may feel a little too twitchy or a little too uncontrollable. But with a light mouse, it's a lot easier to flick your stuff around and it stop when you want it to stop. Not only am I playing with the Razer Viper V3 Pro, a fairly expensive mouse, if I'm not mistaken, $200 Canadian, I think it's like $150 US. But I also play with probably one of the fastest mouse pads that you can buy right now. I play with the wallhack, formerly known as SkyPad SP004, or the SkyPad 4 for layman's terms. Now, this is a full glass mouse pad with a really nice, insanely texturized rubber bottom, and it is insanely fast. This mouse pad has almost zero friction, so doing things in Apex like tracking or having really smooth motion is very, very seamless. Even doing things like recoil control is insanely easier compared to something like a cloth pad that might be a little bit slower, purely because there's no friction on my pad, so I can move my mouse exactly the way that I want my mouse to move. Now, I did just recently switch to this pad. I used to also play on the Artisan mouse pads. I used to play with, where is it here? The Artisan Hyan, but I ended up recently switching on over to the extra large mid stiffness Artisan Raiden. Now, this is probably also one of the fastest mouse pads that money can buy, and also probably one of the highest quality mouse pads that you can buy. Artisan makes the best quality cloth mouse pads for PC gaming. It is unparalleled how good their mouse pads are compared to everybody else. They're handmade in Japan. They are the best. But something that I was realizing, or something that I was really noticing with this cloth mouse pad, and not just this pad, but cloth in general, is that it wears down over time, especially when you're playing on it every day. And not just that, but you also have to wash it really frequently because dust builds up on it, gunk gets inside of it, crumbs get on it, and that gunk will slow down your mouse pad and just make it feel really awkward in very specific spots, especially spots that you swipe over really often. So I made the switch over to glass mouse pads where it's a lot easier to clean, it's more consistent, doesn't wear down over time, and is also a much smoother experience for games like Apex or Call of Duty or Overwatch, where tracking is really heavy and flicking is less of a priority. Now, if you are interested in switching on over to a glass mouse pad, oh, I guess the sale just ended. They just had a 20 to 30% off sale, and I also just partnered with Wallhack. So if you guys want to pick up a glass mouse pad yourself, especially when they have sales, my discount code District stacks on top, and you can get up to 40% off glass mouse pads and basically turn something that is like $120 US mouse pad into something more like an $80 glass mouse pad. Now, another super important thing that is going to affect your mouse and keyboard aiming is going to be your skates. And me in particular, I've been playing around with a lot of different skates recently, trying to figure out what works best. There's two main kinds of skates that you want to be looking out for depending on what pad you're kind of playing on, and that is going to be control skates and speed skates. Obviously, you can probably guess which each one is. A control skate is going to be on the slower side. It's going to have more friction, and it's going to let you stop a lot easier on your target. Speed skates are a lot faster. They're a lot smoother, and they're going to help you glide around a lot more consistently without less friction. Now, I've been playing a lot on the Jade Airs, which uses a very soft type of plastic that doesn't really work that well, in my opinion, on glass. So recently I've been playing a lot with the Obsidian Pro Air skates from XRAYPAD. Now these skates are a really hard plastic, and on my glass mousepad actually feel like a really fast skate. The Obsidian Pro Air on glass actually feels faster and smoother than the Jade Air on glass. So again, this is why I was kind of saying the gear that you use is really going to determine how your sensitivity really feels. It's going to feel sticky. It's going to feel more slippery. It's going to feel like you can start and stop when you want. A lot of people, they try to find the perfect sensitivity, when in reality, they need to be looking for the perfect skates, the perfect pad, and the perfect mouse that fits what they're trying to aim for in terms of feeling. Your in-game sense can only do so much. How fast does it move on your screen? Your mouse skates, your mouse pad, and your mouse is going to determine how it actually feels on your hands and on your screen. Now, with that in mind, like I said, I do play with the Obsidian Pro Airs, and if you also want, I also did just get partnered with XRAYPAD as well, probably one of the best skate companies that you can buy. You can also use code district for 10% off. I would suggest getting the donut skates. They're a little bit more stable than the dots. They're a little bit wider, and they will help keep your mouse from wobbling as much if you were to get these dot skates. Now as well, this is actually the setup that I have right here. I use like I said, the Obsidian Pro Airs, and I use it just like how you kind of see right here on the screen. 2 at the top, 2 at the bottom, and that's it. Now for keyboards, I actually use the EZ63 by the company called Inquinix. They are a Chinese company. They're very similar to Wu-Ting. Their goal is to basically compete against Wu-Ting and to make very high quality keyboards, but just at a lot more affordable price. But like I was saying, I use the EZ63, this keyboard right here. And the main reason why I use this keyboard in particular is because you can actually customize how far each key travels before it's registered as an input. And you can do a lot of customization to the keys themselves. Basically what you're able to do inside of performance here is once you pick what switch you're using, you can customize, like I said, how far each key travels down, how far it travels back up before it stops inputting, and you can just do so much customization to help your keyboard feel a lot smoother. So I really tweaked mine. Maybe I'll make a video on this in the future, but I've set it up to make super glides a lot more consistent. For instance, let's see if I can hit this for a try. There we go. Coming on over into my keybinds. Now, I set up my keybinds a lot different than maybe most mouse and keyboard movement players would, and that's because I switched on over from controller to mouse and keyboard, and that was a really big transition for me. So I tried to find little ways to make it as easy as possible. So starting off here with our movement, all of my movement keys are, the default here, with the exception that my move forward second key function and jump second key function is scroll up and scroll down. And this makes it so that if I want to do something, let's just say like a wall jump, if I scroll down, I don't really have to time when I hit the wall. So for instance, if I do this with my space bar, it's a lot more difficult because I have to time when I'm going to jump, versus if I scroll, I just scroll and it's just automatically going to pop me off the wall. Now, scroll up is bound to move forward, and this is so that I can do things like this, otherwise known as a tap strafe. So I can basically redirect my momentum by tap strafing, which is basically moving your body in the direction that you're looking. And with this, you can do some pretty fancy stuff like that. You can pop off the wall and go back the way that you came, and you can just do so much really intricate, powerful movement. It is definitely something, if you're not doing right now, you should be looking into learning how to pick up. It's called tap strafing. I play with auto sprint turned on, so I actually don't have a sprint key. I do use my mouse click as toggle zoom. I mostly play hold to crouch with my left control, and I very rarely hit C for toggle crouch unless I'm just trying to camp somewhere. Now, for the most part, all of my keybinds are the default here. I don't think there's anything different in this section over here other than maybe toggle fire mode I have on B. My melee is on V, And I don't play with weapon 1 and weapon 2. I don't play primary and secondary. Instead, I play how controller players would, which is cycle weapon. Now, cycle weapon is mouse 5, which is the most forward button on the side of your mouse. So the mouse that's closest to the very front of your mouse. And my holster is not 4 like most players. Instead, it's mouse 4, which is the mouse button furthest back on my mouse. Now, like I said, I play with the Razer Viper V3 Pro. This only has 2 side buttons on the mouse, not like 500 like some of the other Razer mice do. But yeah, I use forward mouse side button for swap and back for holster, and that lets me start doing things like shoot, swap holster, unholster slide jump, and push right on in, all without having to take my thumbs off of the movement keys. So I can be swapping, holstering, all while I'm looking and aiming at my opponent, all while moving and jumping and, you know, doing a whole bunch of other stuff. Basically, it helps me have more consistent movement without sacrificing anything else. Another part where my settings are a little bit different are my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 keys. By default, that would be 1 primary, 2 secondary, 3 holster, 4 your heal wheel, 5 and 6, I have no idea. The way that I have it set up is that 1, 2, 3, and 4 are my main heals going from most used to least used. So 1 would be my batteries being my most used thing. I'm almost always popping batteries versus cells, right? I want to make sure that if I have health that I'm shooting, I won't dive into how I play. But basically, 1, batteries. 2, shield cells. 3 would be medkits because we're using bats and cells more than we're ever popping medkits. And then 4, instead of being syringes, is actually my heal wheel. It's very rare that I use syringes, so syringes go after, which would be on 5, but most of the time anyways, I'm usually just cycling through to pick syringe and then healing on syringe. Or, in general, I'm usually just keeping my heal wheel on syringe, which would be 4. So let's just say I took some damage right now. Instead of opening up my heal wheel and then like picking what I want, I would usually just go cell by hitting 2, or because my heals are almost always on syringes, I can just hit 4 and get syringes. If I really need to get to a Phoenix kit, I'll just pick Phoenix, or I'll just hit 6. Now my inspect, I put on left shift and N. This way I can shift with my pinky if I need, or if I'm moving to the left and it's awkward to inspect, then I can just move to the left and inspect with N. And if I'm moving off to the right, or if I'm moving straight, or if I'm moving back, then I can just inspect with my left shift instead of my right N key. Now, other than that, I mean, I'm pretty sure that's it for like my keybinds. My gameplay settings are pretty simple. Most people will have the exact same. Compact, prompt styles to keep my screen clean. Button hints are turned off to keep my screen clean. X icon, this is something that I just recently started using. For the longest time, I used to think that those crosshairs that pop up were kind of useless. I would always say you're hitting someone, so you know that you're connecting. Like, there's no reason to have an indicator on your screen to tell you. But what I actually realized is that using that X actually makes it a lot easier to stay consistent with your hip fire. If I'm hip firing, it can be kind of hard to see the in-game crosshair, especially with hip fire. But if I'm hitting shots with the hip fire, that X gives me almost like a tighter idea, a more accurate idea as to where my shots are connecting. So it makes it a lot easier when hip firing to stay on target, because now I can just aim with that X that's popping up on the screen instead of anything else. Damage numbers are on stacking, enemy health bar, and ping opacity. All of this here is enabled. Obituaries are turned on. Minimap rotation is turned off. That's a personal preference. Always sprint, like I said earlier, is turned on. I don't want to have to manually hit sprint. On controller, I came from auto sprint, so I didn't want to have to relearn that. Auto run turned off. Jetpack is always on hold for more control. And yeah, that is it. Off-screen portraits. Yeah, other than maybe my reticle color, which I just play with a big yellow. On my main studio in the United States, I actually play with a black crosshair. And the reason why I play with a black crosshair, it's a custom Steam command that gets rid of the glow and makes the crosshair as hard to see as possible. That way you can play with an on-screen crosshair for more accuracy in general. But I don't have that set up here in my Canadian studio. So instead I opt for a yellow crosshair, which is really easy for your eyes to catch and snap onto. Now, that is everything for what I'm currently playing. If you guys want to use the same gear as me, you guys can do so by looking in the description down below, clicking on those links. That will bring you to the website, and if you guys also want, you guys can use code DISTRICT to get up to 10% off on some products, sometimes even up to 20 to 30% off on others, depending on if there's any good deals going on. I would definitely check out Wallhack. They make insanely good mouse pads, especially their SP004 glass pad. They also do have control or speed pads if you would prefer it in cloth. They have it in black, they have it in white, and they have it in these cool styles over here, these anime sort of ones. And yeah, if you guys got any questions, leave in the description down below, leave in the comment section down below, and I will do my best to get back to anyone that has anything that they need answered. With that being said, guys, do not quit. It only gets easier from here. Later, gang.